Okay, we are starting our live stream right away. Very exciting. Just waiting for some creators to join, waiting for some people to join. Welcome, welcome. Okie dokie. Awesome. Our creators are getting on here. This is super exciting. About to jump into some Q&A questions for the day. I hope everybody's ready. Hi, good morning, Ziad. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How about you, Olivia?
Pretty good. It's pretty snowy over here today, but that is a-okay because I'm ready for Christmas.
Yeah, we're entering that winter season.
Definitely. I see that Dweez is entering. Hi, Dweez. How you doing?
Great, how are you guys?
Good. Very good. How's the weather there today?
Rainy, like usual.
That sucks.
Yeah, it was sunny in the morning though, so I went outside in the morning.
Good. At least you got some sun in today. That vitamin D is very important, I would say. So,
Yeah, it is.
moods. I think we're just waiting on one more here. And so far it's just the three of us waiting for some more people to join. Woohoo! Very good today. Okay.
Waiting on
Start through, but this is exciting. Yeah, go ahead, Ziad. What were you gonna say?
waiting on Dom. Is he coming in?
Message. You guys in too? Is that one of you two?
No, it's not me, it's yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
it's not me. I'm
Like
not the culprit.
awesome. I see Dom's joining us here right away. Perfect. Well, we have a few people in the chat, so we might as well get started, I guess. So I'm Olivia. I'm the social media manager for Practicum. We have our three amazing creators here with us today. We have Ziad, Dweez, and Dom. Welcome, Dom. And today we're going to be doing a Q&A session along with a couple questions just to get us started. Hopefully more people join throughout this live stream. It's really exciting. Do you guys hear background noise in the back of my...
I don't know.
No? Okay. Might just be me then on my side. But we'll jump right into it. So, a couple questions to start us off here, and I'm a little bit blurry. I'll find better lighting in a minute. So we'll start with the question. We'll start, I guess, with Dom today. What do you think about roadmap.sh as a starting point to get into the dev game? That was like a super aggressive question to start out with.
Yep, that is an interesting question. So about roadmap.sh, it is a good page definitely because it has that. By the way, when I'm talking this, I'm referring mostly to front-end development because I know that space the best, so I will focus on that plan. And I think it's pretty good because you have everything there, like literally from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the tools, NPM, like much more than that. But as a starting point, to be honest, I think it's an overkill. Like you definitely don't need to know all that stuff to become a front-end developer. It's way too much. And in my opinion, like many courses, and not just courses, but all those roadmaps and everything online, it's too complex and too big. And people are focusing, I don't know, for JavaScript, they're teaching people complex JavaScript concepts that even senior engineers don't understand. And that shouldn't matter to you. So, in my opinion, yeah, as I said, like many of those courses and roadmaps are just too complex, and I would say try doing the basics. Maybe pick a couple of first a couple of items on roadmap.sh. It can be like a good. How can I say a good roadmap, but not to learn everything, but just to check out everything and see what's important and what's not. Then try to build some apps from there. Try to use the knowledge you get, but definitely don't think that you need to learn all of those things, because I've been a front end engineer for like 5 years, and I don't know many things on that roadmap.sh. I mean, I know about them, but I don't know them in depth. So learning everything is just absurd.
Definitely. Great answer. That was super in-depth. I'll jump to, let's go Dweez next. So same question to you for the new people that are just joining here. The question, what do you think about roadmap.sh as a starting point to get into the dev game?
Yeah, well, I think, as Dom said, it has a lot of information. There are way too many things that you don't really need to become a front end developer. But there are resources in there that are free, so that's good if you want to get started, I think. But it can be overwhelming because that's supposed to be the roadmap that will guide you throughout the whole process, right? But it's just there's way too many topics and subjects they're discussing in there. Although the topics that you need, they are also in there, and yeah, then it's a matter of finding one of whatever topic you want to learn. But I think it can be okay, but as a beginner, it's hard for you to know in advance, like, yeah, okay, this is, I need this topic, or I don't need to know this topic. But the fact that it has free resources, I think that could be a good point for beginners. If again you have no idea what you're doing, you have no clue where to start, I think roadmap.sh can be an okay place. It's just, again, what Dom said, there's too many information on there that you may or may not need, and you don't know what you need and what you don't, which eliminates the purpose of the page.
Definitely. Great answer. Ziad, you know what's coming your way. Same question to you. I'm going to repeat it just for the people that are joining the live right now. So what do you think about roadmap.sh as a starting point to get into dev game?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good for like outlining what to learn, especially if you're like literally starting from scratch and you just don't know like what is step one to actually like learn a particular topic. Then it gets you some pretty it gets you like a good starting point, so you know at least like what you should Google and what like courses you should take, for example. So I think it's good from that perspective, but don't treat it like a dictionary where it's like the number one reference, like similar to what the other guy said. Like it's not like it's not like you're not going to be a developer if you don't learn all the topics that are on there. Like you still have to build things on your own and like test the waters for yourself, kind of, so you can know exactly what it is that you might like. Also, thank you, Wouter Woman. Amazing. The gifts are all up there, and you're number one supporter for sure. All the other viewers, you got to step it up, man. Like Wouter Woman's kind of taking you by surprise there.
We definitely have a tie going with donations between the three creators. And I wonder if we can ever get back to that point, that first live stream where it was like, it felt like a million gifts that people were getting. It was pretty cool. Great answer, guys. I feel like that basically summed it up. So hopefully that answered some viewers' questions about that, because I know people are very curious about that. So our next question is C++ a good entry-level language? We'll start with Louise on this one.
If C++ is a good entry level language, I think, yeah, I think there are languages that are much more easier to learn. Like, for me, my first language was C sharp, which it's after C sharp, I definitely have seen easier languages. The syntax right similar to JavaScript, and then you get to Python, and it's really easy. For me, it was easier. Like the syntax of these other languages were easier to read. So that was C sharp. For C++, I don't know. It's like it depends what you want to do as well. Like if you are planning on doing web development, I think you're better off learning JavaScript, Python. There are other languages, but if you want to, for example, get into game dev, I think then it's a good option to start off with C++. It's a bit harder than the other languages, but I think it has its benefit, it has its perks in learning it. There are easier choices though. Just keep that in mind. If you have like you reach the point where you are struggling and you say no, I really cannot do this, keep in mind that there are easier options out there as well. It's just the end goal, what your end goals are in regards to that specific language. I cannot speak for everyone on this in this case, but I think if you start off with a language like C++ down the road, it's gonna be a bit easier. And if I'm not, I don't know C++ myself, but if I'm not mistaken, it's a combination of a functional language. It's an object-oriented language, and it's a combination of the two. Can you guys correct me on this one?
Yeah, I
It's
go next as well. Like it is, yeah. Like I think that's a good way to describe it. Essentially, they just took like the original C and gave it some object-oriented functionality. My answer to your question, Olivia, is a hard no.
Sorry.
Do not start off with C++ in my
Okay.
It's like very dense and it's like what they call low level languages. So that means it's like closer to machine language than it is like human language to an extent. So I think it's difficult. Like I know C++, but I learned it like way later, after I started out with some easier languages just to like, understand, basic syntax and like how do you run a program and stuff like that. So if you're scratch, C++ would be like a pretty tough language in my opinion to start off with. But yeah, I don't the language, so I might be biased here. I don't know what the other folks think, but yeah. And we have a question from the chat. Definitely, like for everyone here, we're taking tons of questions. So drop them in the chat, and we'll answer them as we get to them. But Dom, you want to answer this one?
Sure. So just to repeat the question for everyone who joined, is C++ a good entry level language? And I would agree with the guys and say that it's probably not the best entry level language, especially if you're learning alone. If you are a part of some really nice boot camp or a program and they utilize C++, then it's better. But if you're learning alone, it would probably be really hard for you and you might be demotivated by it and I don't know, decide that you're not for coding at all just because C++ is a really hard language in programming. It stands as one of the hardest programming languages to learn. So only if, as we said, you want to get exclusively into game dev, then it makes sense. But even in game dev, if you want to use Unity, you'll need C sharp. So I would suggest C sharp before C++. And if you want to get into web development, of course, JavaScript. Python is also a good language for starters. But yeah, C++ only if you're like super enthusiastic, because as Ziad said, it's a low level language and you have much more control over the machine, but you don't need that at the beginning, definitely, because the same thing that you can do in JavaScript by calling just one function, you would probably need 50 lines of code to do that in C++ or hundreds lines of code, and you can mess up those one line there and it won't work. So it's just easier to start with Python, JavaScript, or C sharp.
That's so fair. So I'm gonna go down the line. I'm just gonna ask you guys an individual question. What language would you recommend for an entry level language? Just be one. So Zia, do you have one?
I like JavaScript. That's what I would go with.
Right.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree on that one. JavaScript. I would. It's controversial. I wouldn't start with Python. It's you will have a hard time. That's how I feel like. I don't know, but I feel like because it's so simple to read, you may get shocked if you do other languages. But I agree with Ziad here. JavaScript or Python.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are easy languages.
JavaScript whiz, what do you think? What is the best language?
That's exactly how I knew he was gonna.
Well, of course, I would recommend JavaScript, but just I am JavaScript whiz, so yeah, that's one reason. But more because with JavaScript, it's pretty simple to start with, and you can basically do anything. So JavaScript is you can do front and back end, iOS, Android. You can even do things like starting point. Syntax is you'll see like even if you they're definitely different languages. I don't know, for example, JavaScript, C sharp, Java. Those are different languages, but syntax is quite similar in a way. Even like with C++, so you will have a lot of similarities with other languages. So I would suggest JavaScript just as an entry point. If you want to stay with it, why not? Because you can literally make anything with it. It's super powerful language, especially when you add TypeScript
Yeah.
to it. But yeah, as a start,
Awesome.
I'll stick with JavaScript.
Dom, I think everybody knew he was going to say JavaScript, but I like that you added a couple other ones in there. I think that's hilarious. So we have our first, well, I guess this is our second question from the chat. Nick, we see you, and thank you so much for your really appreciate it. So let's get to your question. So Nick's question, for whoever wants to answer it, feel free to jump in, is are there any boot camps for quality assurance tester? I'm assuming it's testing, but you know what I mean. So anybody want to jump in and answer that?
QA. I don't know boot camps per se, but I think like because I saw him mention it a bit later as well. He's talking about like automation testing, currently doing like manual testing. So like QA in general is like testing the actual products. Like once engineers have written the code, like usually you have somebody that is responsible for writing other code to test the original engineer's code. I don't know about boot camps per se. Maybe the other guys can talk about it if they have any. But like I've worked a lot with like learning testing frameworks like Jest, and there's a couple other ones like for Python. There's like Circle CI, for example, which is like a testing library that you can kind of integrate. So I think like learning frameworks is what's used in industry at least. I've worked with QA engineers before, but I'm love the cow that.
Nice hat.
Yeah, like I know that QA engineers they have like a lot of experience with a particular framework, at least based on the ones that I've worked with, which really helps them in their careers. So like if for example Python is your thing, then I would like definitely go out and like see what is the most popular like Python testing framework and like what are the standards for learning it and get really good with that. And there's lots of like tutorials and YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I'm sure boot camps cover this as well, but I would like just really focus on a particular framework and get good with it. That's at least like the most successful QA engineers that I've worked with have been really good with a particular framework. But do you guys have any more specific answers there?
Great answer.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dweez.
Practicum has a QA bootcamp, so if you are interested in that, you can check out the link in the bio. And yeah, Practicum has a good QA bootcamp.
Yeah, so definitely practicums bootcamp, but yeah, so Dweez mentioned that, I mentioned that. We can also talk about automation testing, as this is kind of like a question here, and it's similar to the topic. So as Ziad suggests, like you can do things like unit testing, and that means testing a specific isolated part of the code, and for that you can do, for example, just for JavaScript. But I would also recommend trying a tool like Cypress, and that's what for what are called end-to-end tests, and that means testing in a way, in the same way that user would use it. So, for example, you have an application, I don't know, let's say Instagram, then you as a user log in and get the feed. So that's exactly what you will test with Cypress. For example, with Cypress, you will just simulate user actions, fill in the form, um, programmatically press the button, and then check if everything is displayed there. So yes, Cypress is an amazing framework for testing user flows. Yep, that's
Yeah.
good for me.
Also, thank you to, I think it's Risus Solus. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but I can see you like just upping the stream and liking it a ton. Definitely appreciate that.
Amazing. Yes, thank you, donators. We really appreciate it. Great answers, you guys. So hopefully that helps out Nick. Nick, if you have any more questions, feel free to jump in the chat if you're still here. But we'll jump into a couple more from I think last week. So what is the downside of using Bootstrap? Does somebody want to explain first maybe what Bootstrap is?
I
I
think
can.
that's
Uh,
probably the here for this. Yeah.
yeah, so let me say about Bootstrap. So Bootstrap is a CSS framework. That means CSS is used for styling the page. And if you don't want to write CSS manually, oh, really nice gift here. Yeah, if you don't want to write CSS manually, you can use a framework like Bootstrap, and then in theory, the development will be faster because you won't have to, I don't know, style your form because Bootstrap already has all the styles for styling your form, your input fields, your buttons, and then you have like a consistent set of styles across your application. So that's uh, that's what Bootstrap is. It's kind of like other frameworks, kind of like a newer version of Bootstrap. They're not connected, but is Tailwind. So yeah, Tailwind is I call it like uh, advanced Bootstrap in a way that like it fixed all the flaws that Bootstrap had. But the downsides of those frameworks are you're limited because those frameworks either set a certain set of styles of rules which you later cannot break so easily. You can break it, but then you do what is called hacking. You just write some bad code to override behavior from that framework. So when would I suggest so cool gifts? When would I suggest using Bootstrap? Um, well, I don't know. For example, for startups, you want to create a product as fast as possible, or you just want to not just for startups, but any product you want to create as fast as possible. And if you already have some CSS knowledge, I would recommend using Bootstrap. Otherwise, yeah, it. I don't know if that would be that great idea. Also, that one thing more I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention is if you don't know CSS, core CSS, then definitely don't jump straight into Bootstrap.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because you will just this is just a small framework, and core of that framework is CSS, and you need to learn core CSS first, and then you will easily learn Bootstrap, Tailwind, or any other framework. Otherwise, it's possible that you learn Bootstrap, then Bootstrap updates to a new version, changes a couple of things, and you need to change stuff. You don't know stuff, or I don't know, you're working on a Bootstrap, and you move to other company which uses Tailwind, and then you have a problem because you know Bootstrap. If you know core CSS, then you can just easily learn any other framework. For example, like with front-end frameworks. If you know JavaScript, you can easily jump to React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, or whatever. But if you don't know JavaScript, it's much harder to jump between frameworks.
Definitely.
Okay, I was talking for too long. Somebody else can pick
Do you
up
guys,
the mic.
But
you guys have anything more to add to that, or do you guys feel like Dom like encapsulated that quite well?
I think he summed it up. I think we have another question about is
Yeah, jump in there.
Ruby still a good language to learn? I think 100%. I personally I haven't learned Ruby myself, but like the last company I was at used Ruby like very heavily, and the company was definitely considered like what would be a modern tech company. Ruby there was used to write basically what is like it was like a compiler kind of like they wanted to write their own version of a language, I guess. Like you can think of it that way. And Ruby and like there's frameworks like Ruby on Rails that are like still heavily used today. So I think it's definitely worth learning, but similar to like C++, it's not a language to start with. I think like try to learn like a generic, very very heavily used language like JavaScript or Python. But then Ruby is definitely like one of those things that's still used at some companies for specific use cases. Like if you're into computer science in general, Ruby is generally a good way to like optimize for memory, for example, or like if you really want to control just like CPU utilization. Like if you're getting a little bit low level, but it's a good midpoint, I would say. And I think like any language that is heavily used or like relatively used would still be worth learning. But I wouldn't like go out of your way unless you have a reason to learn it, if that makes sense. And yeah, Rissus Solus, we'll get to your question next, I promise. Does anyone else have anything to say about Ruby in particular? Louise?
No, I think
Hmm.
you summed it up nicely.
Yeah, you said it right. Maybe I would add about Ruby syntax. It is a bit, it can be a bit odd.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not a great language to learn first, just because then going from Ruby to some other language could be a bit harder if you start with C Sharp or Python or JavaScript and then go to some other languages, just because its syntax and how you do everything is Ruby. It's pretty unique to Ruby. So
Yeah.
as Yad said, let it be your second language. But it's definitely a better first language than C++.
Yeah. I think there's some languages that are like good generic ones like Java, JavaScript, C Sharp. And then like there's other languages that are kind of just used for like specific use cases. Like at my current company, we use Go for some stuff, but Go is like it's really specific to what we're doing. Like it has nothing to do with like our love for the language or something. It's just like it's very good for our use case. So I think Go and Ruby and those other ones are like cool to learn if you have like a reason to learn them. But yeah, were you able to find Rissus Solstice question? I wasn't able to like.
No, looking through, if you want to drop that question again, I just scrolled all the way to the top of the live stream. It just must have been missed or deleted. I'm not too sure. Maybe you just forgot to press send. But if you want to shoot it again, we'll absolutely be open to answering that question. And Dominic, I hope we answered your question there with Ruby. I've never heard of that language before, so that's cool. I just learned something new here. So, Dweez, I'll jump into a new question for you. Can you tell us just a little bit about the Java experience?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, first of all, hi Mars. Great to have you here. The job, my from a scale from 1 to 10, my Java experience. I personally don't know Java. I've seen it. I remember seeing it since I was a kid when I would go on the internet to play video games. You would see like everything was made with Java back then. What I can say about the language, I hear horror stories all the time that people say it's the hardest language there is. It's when you learn that language, you'll never be the same. You have a different outlook on life, etc. So, based on that alone, I will say my Java experience is a solid one. Based on the horror stories I have heard about it. Actually, no, I will rank it up a bit higher. I'll make it a 6 because of all those fun games I played that were built with it.
Yeah,
Jump in here. Do you want to add on to that?
there's a cool meme about Java, and you know how back when we were kids, like you started some Java app, and then it said like 3 billion devices run Java, and it was like that 20 years ago. It was like that 10 years ago, and now, and it always says 3 billion devices run Java. So yeah, just like yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's funny or not, but I just needed to mention that. And I can narrate my Java experience. I actually worked for some time as a Java developer because I was a full stack developer back then. So I used Java. I would say it's around 3, 4. I don't know. I personally don't like Java that much, but it's not a bad language to start if you want to learn like the concepts of object-oriented programming. I learned concepts of object-oriented programming with Java, so maybe it's great if you want to learn those. It's still a powerful language
I
today.
got a
It's still
ducky.
oh
I'm
wow.
sorry. I'm sorry. I just got a ducky.
That makes
So cool. Yeah, now you're leading
Yeah,
pretty hard. So yeah,
Yeah,
like
thank you.
Ziad and myself would also love to get some gifts. Otherwise, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I'm even
this
last.
is depressing when I see the
It's
Wages
like
number.
one behind Dom, so I feel even worse. It's like Dom, at least you're second, you know? It's not
so
Yeah, I think we're both like yeah, compared to Dwayne.
Yeah.
But yeah, about Java, as just to wrap it up, yeah, it's a good thing if you want to like understand object or oriented concept. It's still widely used. It's a good language. I can't say that that it isn't, and maybe it's even good for a first language.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I personally actually learned Java pretty early. Like I learned JavaScript first, but only in the context of web programming. So it wasn't really like the object oriented concept or anything like that. And I think I saw Mars say it like a couple messages back saying like that it's pretty good to learn object oriented, and that's how it was for me. Like learning Java pretty early got me into like the way of thinking of like classes and objects and like encapsulating certain things. So it's like I think it made me a better programmer like when I learned Java. I don't think you should just stop like at your like even if you want to be just a web developer, you should still learn an object oriented programming language that's like very dedicated to being object oriented. And I think Java and C Sharp are like really the leading languages there. So yeah, I think it's definitely good to learn it, even though like I don't think I use Java like at all. Like there are some companies that use frameworks, like I think Spring Boot is one of them that is like Java based, but I've just never come across it. But I still like think it was good. It was pretty good to learn. Um, but yeah, I think there was another question about functional. Do you think functional paradigm will increase around many languages more in time? Uh, do you think is it? Oh wow! Now I'm the loser. Now I feel terrible. um, Dom, do you want to take a crack at this? Like functional? Does he mean like functional programming or?
Yep. That's such a hard question,
Yeah.
open to debates. Uh, Maybe we can say that is true because what's, for example, recently going on with JavaScript. Okay, Ziad, you're in the game now.
Now I'm back.
Now we're all pretty high, flying high. Yeah, if you take a look just at JavaScript, for example, and all the frameworks like React and even Vue, they're all moving from those kind of like class concepts to functional programming, like pure functional with React hooks with Vue free.
hmm
So that's just front end, but JavaScript is like the most popular language and most widely used, so it definitely takes a huge piece of cake. Um, I don't know. It's hard for me to say for other languages, but for me, it seems like we're slowly, like I don't know. In just my hunch is that we are aligning more to functional programming
Yeah.
overall. I don't know. It's just like hunch, and don't take that as an advice or anything. But it's I would just say that if I have to pick something.
Yeah, even I use like at work we use mostly Python and Flask on the back end, and like it's written in a pretty functional standard. We're not using a ton of like class polymorphic kind of like models. Like once you get past the database layer, everything is pretty functional from that end. So I think I think like I don't know if it's going to increase in languages throughout, but I will say, like, in the average company that's building products, the stack these days is pretty functional, I would say. Unless you're, like, purposefully trying to go the object oriented route, then yeah, I think that's where it is. Too easy
Yeah.
about it. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. For I agree with what you guys said for development, front end development. I don't know how it will. I don't really get like the question in the sense that yeah, the other languages around functional programming, but what I'm about to say is not really related to functional programming. It's more about object-oriented programming. Because while there, as you guys said, we are moving towards that, and in front-end development and web development, I think objects are. I don't know. I feel like it's. I do not know because I don't work in the game dev field, but I think for that it's still going to be solid, right? I don't know if you make games with functions like that. I mean, of course they use functions as well, but I think classes and objects are still important for that. And with the rise of virtual reality and yeah, the metaverse and all of that, for that I think it would still be relevant. But that's a different topic. It's not about what we are talking about here.
That's okay. I'm
Yeah.
glad that thank you so much, you guys. That was awesome. That was a good explanation. I know like being thrown random questions on the spot is hard. We do see your question finally, so I'll jump in here. And Mars, thank you so much for like commenting on this. It's nice to see like people are understanding where we're coming from, like with Ziad's comment or Louise's comment or Dom's comment. And feel free to follow our account as well because we cover a lot of these things. Want us to expand on anything, we're absolutely welcome to. So let's jump in and answer that question in the chat that we finally can see now, which is so exciting. So the question is, sorry, I'm just scrolling up here to try to find it. How do you find motivation to continue to work as a dev if you are very like a long time into the industry?
Yeah, maybe I can say something to that. So my experience was I've been working as a dev for like 4 to 5 years, and that is true. I slowly started to lose motivation to work in companies. What I suggest, so there are two things you can do here. One is something that didn't work that well for me, and that was you find a company that you actually want to work for, and you try to get a job there, and you work on one product. That can increase motivation because if you're in an agency and if you're jumping just from project to project, then can be a bit boring to, I don't know, recreate login screen for 6 times for a different project. So yeah, I don't know. You have an app you love. I don't know, Spotify, for example. Do everything to work at Spotify and find your perfect job there, and that might increase your motivation. Other thing which I did was just need to somehow start giving back to the community because uh, technically you're not taking anything, but community is giving a lot to you. Like you're reading Stack Overflow answers, YouTube video. You're watching YouTube videos. You're consuming so much tech content, but you're not giving anything back. And there's a lot of satisfaction in giving value back. That's what I did, for example. That's what all three of us did here. We started creating content, and it is connected to tech, of course, but it includes a lot of creativity, and it motivates us to continue. I want to talk for the guys, but at least me, because it's wonderful to give back to community. You have other things. You don't have to create content on TikTok. You can just, I don't know, you can start doing open source projects. You can start some other side hustles. I don't know, you can start writing online. You can start creating some apps, but try doing something besides your work, because it's so easy to start a side hustle today, and see how that goes on. For me, that was the best thing I've ever done going into content creation. So it changed my life completely. I'm definitely way more motivated now than before when I was just working for companies. I mean, I still work, but yeah, I'm definitely more motivated now when I have something that I created on the side, which is all that content. So yeah, that would be
Definitely.
something for
Okay.
me, guys.
Great answer. Or Dweez, let's go you next. How do you say motivate?
Yeah, I know. I think it's funny. Tom, you've been working in tech for a while now, and you started creating content as a means to give back to the community, to keep yourself motivated. I think it's really cool that that's literally what how you got here, you know. So it's nice to hear that. For me, it was I wasn't a developer. I was still learning, and it's exactly like I was making content as well, with just things that little tricks that I found out that was working for me, and I made content about it as well. And it's nice. It really gives you a why to to why you're learning, to why you're doing something. And I think it's you maintain that same thing from a beginner to a senior developer, all the way to a senior developer, as Dom mentioned. So I think what you said, Dom, it's I think it's accurate. Giving back to the community gives you a why, and I think that's the best motivator you can have in anything you do.
Great answer. Amazing. Ziad, you're up. What keeps you motivated?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about working in like a company and kind of working there for a while, is that you get to like, like when you first join, you're the one that's onboarding, and you're the one who's like learning from everybody else around you, and you're the one that's asking all the questions and stuff like that. But as you kind of like work there, after the 90-day phase, whatever, you start to ask like less and less questions. You get to start like getting accustomed to what's the company standard for certain work and stuff like that. And the really cool part is if you're on a team or like you're in a company that's like growing and it's like hiring other people, you get to kind of like be on the opposite side of that pretty quickly. Like now you're the person who is answering questions and helping other people on board. And for me, that's what keeps me motivated for sure. Like I'm currently working at like a mid-tier kind of company that's still growing. So like we are hiring like where other people have. It's very cool to be able to like, in a sense, be like a short-term mentor to some people until they get like up to speed on what's going on, and I find that very fulfilling. Like I really like the people aspect of like software engineering, and like seeing people like develop and stuff like that is really fun for me. So I think that at an individual company that'll happen as you hire people, but then also as you just like grow in your career, like you'll have more experience than other people. Like Dom has a ton of front end experience, and I could like ask him about front end stuff, and like eventually as me and Dom grow old, like there's going to be other front end developers that are won't be able to like answer their questions and stuff like that. So for the most part, I think that's what keeps me going.
Definitely. Those are great answers, you guys. I hope that answered your question about being motivated because I know it's really hard, even like in this kind of hybrid environment where people are working from home and like they're not getting that interaction, and then also just like repetitive content. So great answers, you guys. Really hope that answered your question. So we do have another question in the chat here: how to build your CV as a programmer or computer science or audio visual items like that. So Dom, I think you are good to answer that one. Do you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, sure. I would just add like all these. Thanks for all these questions. Feel free to ask anything here. But if you wanna hear topics like this and much broader range of topics, just follow our account because I think we ship like 5 videos per day about these topics. We're really active there, so yeah, it's definitely a place to help you like break into tech. But now on back on the question, how to build your CV as a coder, computer science, audiovisual. I would say go, for example, to Canva. It's a great website with a lot of great templates. Just use a template there. Try to make it as short as possible and as simple as possible. So I would just suggest simple layout, simple colors. Don't. There are some CVs that have all those additions like different graphs and different pie charts and everything. Don't, in my opinion, like you shouldn't pick up that for the main reason. and that's because recruiters, when you apply with your CVs, they already have programs that scan through CVs. And if you have like super complex CVs with all the graphs and all the pie charts and everything, then those machines won't scan that properly, and it will seem like you miss some information there. So yeah, keep it simple, keep it short. Definitely have it just on one page, and yeah, everything you put there should matter. So I would start always at the top, like your name, your role, then short introduction about yourself. How can you help that company? What do you do? What you're good at? And then, of course, list your experience, list your education. Focus on experience too, and focus on things you've done there to help the company. So if you're in the game for a longer time, that you can list like just software experiences or coding experiences or some of those technical experiences. But if you're just starting, list any job that you did before, because it is really helpful. Even though you might think it doesn't have any similarities, but if you worked anywhere, you that means that you've already worked. You collaborated with people. You need to be a part of some meetings or etc. You need to follow and learn some processes. So that's really helpful, and it shows to people that you can and want to learn. Yeah, that would be me, guys. I don't know if you have anything to add here.
Uh, yeah, I think like Dom said, like the most critical part is listing just like any experience. Like I like graduating from college, most people just have like nothing. Like having like an internship is insane, but like most people don't have that. So that means that when you think about it from the recruiter's perspective, they're getting like 1,000 applications. Like maybe a couple of them will have like some internship experiences, but most won't, and they need to obviously like hire a lot of people. So anything that you could think that might make you stand out a little bit, it could be like I played sports, like I was involved in the community, I volunteered, like literally if you were just like active in any way, it's really important to show that because it means that you're like you have goals, you have ambitions, like you just want to show recruiters and hiring managers that you're like a pretty well-rounded person, like you're an interesting guy. A lot of managers would usually tell me that like when they're talking with someone in an interview, they're just seeing like, is this somebody that I would like to like have lunch with? Like am I going to be able to just like hang out with this person and enjoy working with them? So definitely like anything that might make you seem like a little more interesting is very good. And I think like when you're really early on, there's a lot of like easy ways to just get like any relevant experience. I think last live stream I mentioned like hackathons, for example. Like there's things that you could just join just for the sake of putting it on your resume. Like you don't even have to do good in those kind of events. Like you just have to like be engaged and show that you're like relatively active and ambitious. And I think with that and applying to a ton of jobs, you'll eventually land something. But yeah.
Definitely. Dweez, do you have anything to add, or do you feel like they summed it up pretty well?
Yeah, pretty much. And I think with CVs at least, it's a matter of just as Dorm said, keeping it as short as you can. Don't over. How do you call it? I can't find a word for that. Like, don't give out more information than needed. Just keep it short and sweet. And yeah, be the guy that your boss would want to have coffee with, as the ad said.
Definitely, because you are a coworker, so you do need to participate in like the co-working activities, which is small talk in the break room if you do go into work, which I know sometimes can be painful, but sometimes it's really fun because then you end up talking about shared experiences and then you make a friend at work. So that was a tangent. But thanks for the answers, guys. If you guys have any more questions, ladies and gentlemen, everybody in the chat, feel free to pop them in here. Like we're all welcome to answer a couple more questions here. I have one more for you creators on the side here. So this is kind of a controversial topic, I would say right now, but is there a bubble or a hiring freeze on software engineers or even just on the tech industry right now? Can anybody kind of touch on this subject?
Yeah, maybe I can reply to that one. So I don't know how if you are checking stocks and like just the situation in world in general, but we are in a recession that is yeah that is obvious. Some companies are having layoffs. That is true, and uh, some companies are having hiring freeze. But it's just a common, I would say, a common spiral of like just humanity. We always have recessions and we always have periods of growth. Now we're just in that period of recession, and that will change pretty soon, like in a couple of months, maximum a year or two. Who knows? Like it was COVID, it was everything. It was pretty wild in the last couple of years, and of course, like all the other things that are happening in the world, I won't even mention them right now, but that shouldn't stop you from going into software engineering because tech is not going anywhere. Why are companies having hiring freezes? Well, because we're in a recession, stocks dropped, stakeholders said cut the expenses, so they needed, of course, unfortunately, to lay off people. But that will all jump back to all-time highs pretty soon, and tech will be here. Tech is still pretty underdeveloped. Tech will be extremely developed in 5, 10, 20, 50 years. So you breaking into tech now is the best investment of your life. And don't be bothered with these numbers. Look at it long term, and long term tech is definitely staying, and it's gonna be more powerful than ever.
Definitely. Dweez, I see you nodding your head. You want to in on this?
Yeah, I like the end statement. Tech will be more powerful than ever. I think, yeah, recessions, for example, yeah, it's these things come and go, so it won't hurt. Like, I don't have anything to add really to what Dom said.
Definitely. Ziad?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough when you kind of go through this, but like, it's not like this is the first time ever that there's been like tech slowdowns or anything. If you look at like 2008, like when the U.S. had its like had a pretty big recession at that point, big companies like Microsoft and Google and so on, like they also like either went through layoffs or hiring freezes. The thing is, what you got to remember is like these companies are run by very like lots and lots of money. Obviously, like these are pretty high level companies, and for them, there's like two things. Like for example, Microsoft in 2008, they had like a lot of like cash that they were sitting on. Like they weren't like suffering, they weren't gonna go like bankrupt or anything like that, but they still had layoffs. So like the reason they did that is because when you get to like a recession stage where like the entire world is suffering or like the entire country is suffering from like slowdowns in general, companies sometimes like use that as like a kind of a time where they could like lay off some of like the lower performing people in the company and replace them, or like use that as like a strategic advantage to like cut costs in general and having the recession to like justify that. So I think what's happening now is similar. Like you have two types of companies: the companies that are like actually struggling because they can't like make enough money to like keep the doors open and keep the lights on. But then there's like the big companies, which is like, Google is not going to go broke like in this recession. I think we can like all agree on that. Like same with Apple, like they're still going to be selling iPhones in a year, nothing's going to happen to them. So I think with that in mind, like a, a person that's like struggling to find jobs right now, just you got to be like patient and know that like the companies will start hiring again at some point, like once things settle down. Usually these companies just take this as like a time to take a deep breath, like, look at how they're doing overall, slow down hiring just to make sure they have everything under the control. And once the economy starts kind of booting back up again, then they start hiring and we go back to normal. So these are cycles. You just got to kind of wait it out and hope for the best.
Yeah, definitely peaks and flows. I know Twitter is a crazy place to be right now, both internally and watching it externally. And I know there's a lot of tech people in that as well. So
I I
just
just love how no one mentioned Meta.
Yeah.
yeah,
You didn't. How will they survive?
yeah. Oh my gosh. I think we have time for one more question here. So I see we're being spammed in the chat by Pinkheart. I don't see your username, but what are the best websites to find roadmaps for development, up-to-date roadmaps, perhaps? Does anybody have like a recommendation, maybe one or two, just because we're almost out of time here?
I think free code camp, yes. I don't know. It's a hard question. What do you guys think? I think if for a roadmap for the what you need to learn, if you, what do you guys think? I think if for a roadmap for the what you need to learn, if it's not too much like roadmap.sh, I've seen the roadmaps on Free Code Camp for not too much like roadmap.sh. I've seen the roadmaps on Free Code Camp for front end development, back end development, etc. Though they were okay. They didn't have excessive information in them. But I don't know what you guys think.
Probably roadmap.sh. It was one of the questions we discussed at the beginning. That's a really good place for like extensive, up-to-date roadmaps. But it's just like really, really big, so you don't need to know all of that stuff. But it's definitely good to look at those roadmaps and see like, okay, all of this is relevant at this moment in, I don't know, front end or back end. But it's not like you need to cover that all. It's just like relevant, but not all for you and not all for a single person.
Definitely. Zian?
Yeah, I mean, boot camps are always nice because there's actually people that are teaching them, so it's like relatively going to be up to date. So I think we mentioned Practicum's boot camps are great. There's a couple other boot camps out there that are great as well. For the most part, websites, in my experience, have been like up to date in terms of like what's like reasonably used. I learned a lot through like Code Academy, or Code Academy, I think is how you say it. So you can definitely check that out, or just like YouTube stuff, and it'll tell you when the video is uploaded. If it was more than like 2-3 years ago, then maybe find something newer on a particular subject. But a lot of stuff just like doesn't change. Like honestly, if you take like a CSS like fundamentals course, it doesn't matter if it was made like 10 years ago. Like it's still like pretty much the same stuff in terms of the fundamentals. Obviously, if you want to be able to like learn what came out in the last year or something like that, then might have to do a little bit more digging. But I think boot camps are definitely a good way to go if you want to like learn and know that it is like the most recent stuff that is being used in the industry.
Definitely up to date. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, creators. That was cool to learn about industry, I guess, right now in tech, because I know that's a prevalent issue that's happening. We do this every Wednesday from 11:30 Eastern to 12:30 Eastern. There is our time zone here. I'm like, it's 12:30 my time, and I'm not Eastern time. But feel free to jump on and follow us. We have lots of great tech content that you can learn to break back. Creators, do you have anything you want to add in before we hop off here for today?
I came in second, so I'm happy.
Yeah, I came in last, but it was a closed one, so I'm happy. Thanks a lot for your gifts, attention, everything. Just follow us for amazing tech content, and yeah, we'll be seeing you in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody's support.
Yeah. Thank you
Thanks,
for all
guys.
the gifts.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Awesome.